With the vehicle raised and supported off the ground safely, you want to take the lug nut cover off. This is a 21mm socket, by the way. And with a 22mm, take off all the lug nuts. If your wheel is seized onto the hub like this one, put on a lug nut and use a hammer or rubber mallet from the back. Hit the tire, not the rim, and take the wheel off. All right, to start replacing this caliper, what I want to do first is crack the brake hose free from the caliper, because if I try to do this once the caliper's off the truck, it'll be a lot more difficult. So with an 11mm, break this free and then snug it back up so you don't lose fluid. With a 19mm, remove your 2 caliper bolts that hold it onto the bracket. And slide the caliper out of the way. Remove your pads. And now with an 18mm, we're going to remove the caliper bracket mounting bolts. And remove your caliper bracket. With your new caliper and bracket, once they're taken apart, what you want to do is pull out the slider pins. You want to add some caliper grease to them. Make sure there is some right up top here on this lip. That'll help the boot seal up properly. Give them a few twists and do the same to both. That same caliper grease you want to apply right here where the anti-rattle clips sit. Just a little, just a very thin layer, enough to prevent rust from building up between the hardware and the bracket. After that, take your caliper hardware, press it down till it locks in. You want to make sure it doesn't move. Same on both sides. Next, install your caliper bracket onto the knuckle. Snug these up, and then we'll torque them to 130 foot-pounds. Next, I like to put in my pads. Make sure the inboard pad has the squealer up on the top, and put in your outboard pad as well. At this point, I am going to grease up the new caliper. Put a little bit of grease on each of these 3 ears here. That'll help the pads operate smoothly and quietly. And then do the same to the outer ring of the piston, both of them. Next, I like to install my caliper and get it securely mounted. And torque these to 30 foot-pounds. If your slider pin is spinning in there, you can grab it with a pair of pliers or a wrench. Just make sure you don't damage the boot. Now that my new caliper is securely mounted, I'm going to get ready to install the brake hose. So take the old banjo bolt off. So you want to remove the banjo bolt and the old copper washers. These are not to be reused. Grab your 2 new ones, slide one over the banjo bolt, then put the bolt through the hose. Then on the other side, put the other washer, then reattach the hose to your caliper and snug it up. When it bottoms out, give it about 1/8 to 1/4 of a turn. Make sure it doesn't leak, and let's get to bleeding the caliper. To bleed this caliper, remove the rubber plug that's on top of the bleeder screw, and with a 10mm, open up the bleeder screw and let it gravity bleed. What that's going to do is it's going to let gravity fill up the caliper with brake fluid. It'll come out here as a trickle of fluid. Once that's done, we'll close it up and do a full brake bleed. Once you get a nice steady trickle of fluid like this with no air, go ahead and close up the bleeder screw and we'll move on to a full brake bleed. So what the full brake bleed consists of is someone goes inside the vehicle, pumps the brakes 3 to 4 times, then holds the brake pedal down with some pressure. When that person's holding, you want to crack the bleeder open. Once the pedal reaches the floor in the vehicle, you close the bleeder screw, have that person pump up the brakes 3 to 4 times again, open the bleeder screw while they're holding, and repeat the process until you get no more air bubbles. Once that's done, put your cap back on. Let's clean up the area a little bit. And now let's get the wheel installed. You want to start on all your lug nuts. You're going to snug them up and then torque them to 140 foot-pounds. With just a little bit of pressure on the wheel, let's torque these to 140 foot-pounds. And don't forget about your lug nut covers.